Good morning again, Rinpoche. And good morning, Katrina. Thank you for your translation.
Also, welcome. Tilly.
And welcome to all our online participants. We're happy that you can join us this morning. So Geshe will probably finish the text either today or next Monday. And if you'd like to make an offering for his incredibly precious teachings, or Katrina Brooks for her excellent translation, and to the Abbey for hosting the teachings, you'll find how to do that in the chat box. And something to look forward to, through his tremendous generosity, Rinpoche has agreed to teach on the precious garland, Nagarjuna's precious garland, starting in the spring. So keep an eye on the Abbey website for the start of that. So we'll begin with some preliminary prayers, and the link for those prayers is also in the chat box.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one that's gone, foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, knower of the world's supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow, with pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best supreme guide, to you I bow, with the supreme science, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field, endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the 4 faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn, Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Oh yeah, doing so.
第三，
Oh yeah. Oh dear, George Patin Adisha Sole, Raw. Look at that. Chenny Yunton, Shije number Mansa. Chenny Yunton, Shije number Ma. Say, Chisam Meshibesa. Nangbe Chula, Homa Lembata, Rangin de Batan de Longchans. Oh, she Sumbata Ra. Angarazu, Metsede Chidane Koshira Rumbuke Mara. Yunton don't chire Sungara, Chenny Yuntons. Tina Neda Zurina Law Mambule Sadi, Dileja Chita Jena Kotebra in a Shirate Omara. I can send you into Ose. The Shejada Sosin Solayata, Shija Mambushada Sungura. But in the sending you to Shija number Mangase. Say, Chizam Mishibe. Chita Tundu Ibekan Tanda Kazi Deru Yuma take Omara. Lochi ma kashe te sam koga churi te ne ke omare oti ndiko se ya chizam bishime se te de kaje te ro ne tan te de ke omare chera chita yin tundu re te na ne ima kaje te ro ye te ne ke omara dire ma nye de sanyi la ye ne te de che te ke omara ya se ya chizam bishime kaje yo de ha ko omare sora Teta Karje was Nambe Chula Homa Lembatars. Pechan Shera. Namba does a cochuda Homaniam dotation, a Homa de Tunchudi Shasha Visera. Suso Koe Chudi Yechetu Visera, Mazudi Yechetu Mara. Chedangambe Chula Homa Lembatars. Ranget Nova Tandulasha, Suso Careta Kechevina. The could say Yetonduchi, the Chendida Cocarjana Tandu Sarajero. In the Chima. Kyawa Sangbuchin Due Tandati, Sasoshi Udes Ora. Nambe Chula Oma Lambata, Ranga de Batasla, Tandulasha, Tanle Chise. Stakyawa Chima, Kibuchung de Samluina Kolhada Mi. Kyawa Sangbuchi Shutu Betan Kabarchi Tabgo Samgiora. Oh, Tenete with Dile Samlu Cherchina. Or the Tambutichi Lamna Mandatis. Oh, yeah.
So, to begin with, a quotation from the great master Atisha, who has said that the length of this life is short and there are so many things to know. And even the length of our life, though, is something that we can't be certain of. So just in the same way that a swan takes milk from water, we should willingly do those things that are important or what we would like. So this life is something that is a short period of time, and many of us have already lived a number of years, so we don't have a very long period here in this life. And when we think about it, there are basically infinite various things to know. And so when we look at the length of our life, though, there is no certainty. Like some of us may think, oh, well, I'll be here for a long time, but there's no way that we have a guarantee on that. We might think like, I'll be here today, tomorrow. We have that sort of sense in our mind, but yet there is no certainty. There is no assurance that we will be here for very long. The length of this life is something uncertain. So in the way that a swan, they use this example of a swan who is able to extract the milk from water, really taking what is most important, we too should follow that example and not just sort of take up the affairs of this life, but really think beyond that to our future lives. At the very least, thinking about in the kind of thought of a being of small capacity, ensuring that we get a good rebirth, a good support of a human or a god life in the future, and thereby take up the kind of actions that are necessary for ensuring that.
Oh yeah. Oh, do take us order. Nambe Chula Malambata Ranga Nobatan Shasidu. Tangarazu Chibachi Beshane Senero. Nikiwachima. Kandish Kuguresina. Kyoangemba Tundula Sobe, Kyoangemba Malambashe. ane lada mela sobe kiwa sambuchi tena tsendile chuchuba na shi chuchube ten kebarche o tende si tabgo wara deva tambu tira nanzo kibu chungo si chule tambu juwe deva tira o ti inde ko kiwa chima lada mi chuchube ten kebarche tanda chuchuba na shi ti kyun tuni ya jetang sake kukabi yebe ane milu ya laye lu ten kebarche chu tarsa sanji ki chu tarsa tindrechiliya kiwe deva yora o ti inde ti chindu ta kariche urasede susu chuguru bati kyudi sane tili lepkiri kyumeni tili yo marwa o ti inde ngesongi kyo pa ka sada mi chudrube ten kebarche toya tundaliya ane rangi lunga yesum yikone shenla tsawapa rawa ngazu mikiwa chusigira to ngazu ti namgyu tong chung de sigira ke ti sira ke chimbusik mara ina ke chinshu tere dora ngaran surya luji kone rawa sochu machin len soba rawa ne ngage kone chentra machizu yi kone nakse nese lodala soba o tinde chebe ne shenla tsawa yungu wara shenla tsawa yungu karindigo marasane shenla tunghe yungu wara yin shen tunghe da trendu tsawa chung chi tsawa chenpo mena ya o ti to ne ane miki wa chu ti pa tin do so kyoba rawa so kyoba sira so chebe do so de la so kyoba si che ma jimba lembe tele ya so kane mi nor su la mal me che pa chi ni kane ki chi bata ya ta tende rawa ta miki wa chu do so o tene so kyoba la so o te la lo kore so gora ti de ti nga zu ni ri na le ke chembo che Tiri nime kong liya, ene nge song le kichi ke kyu, nyunga yisum ji kone kaya so chiba la soba, kaya meba chigi insan, so kyoba la soba chini ji kiwa tubi insan, nyiri mesina samlo tangji, titu ku yara, ya tiji song.
So here, as this describes, like a swan extracting the milk from water, we should willingly take up what is important to us. And as Dharma practitioners, the very first level is making sure, the sort of first level of our desire is making sure that we have the kind of basis of a life as a human or a god to be able to continue to practice the Dharma. So ensuring that we have that kind of a life and take birth in a place where the Buddha's Dharma has spread, we need to accumulate the kind of causes. If this is what we want to have, we have to accomplish the causes in order to achieve that. And so the basic causes of that are abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions and engaging in their opposites, the 10 virtues. So the 10 non-virtuous actions of killing and stealing and sexual misconduct, lying and harsh speech and so forth, covetousness, malice, these are all actions that cause harm to others. They generate suffering for others. And so while we might look down on this like, oh, that's kind of insignificant, that's not really important, actually abandoning the 10 non-virtues and engaging in their opposites are really the foundation. They are critical. So we should make sure that any of our actions of body, speech, and mind are not going to cause harm or suffering to others. Even if we think it's just like a small harm or a small suffering, we still should avoid those kinds of actions. And at the same time, make an effort to engage in their opposites. So the opposite of taking life is protecting life, of trying to do things that are nurturing for life. And the opposite of like stealing, we engage in things like generosity, making sure others have what they need. So on a daily basis, then we need to train in this, to take these activities up into practice, thinking at the start of our day, I'm not going to engage in any kind of actions that are harmful to others, that cause suffering to others. And instead, I'm going to work to engage actively in their opposites. This is the very first sort of level of willingly taking up what we want in terms of a Dharma practitioner.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the Indutinic Soda. The Tambutilia, Najanam Beauty Kasoda. Oh, certain number of Hirsung Seda, Nikichubong Sudit Sungiara, certain number of Hirsung. Nolam Trima maybe some chars. Chinso Paro to Chimbe Troches. 가서래 짐바 추진 서바 삼대에서가 저 바로 집어 주셔요라 어디 되는 개심부터 되게 제서 바로도 집어가 조셔서라 말람 좀마에 삼자르세 어디는 소소에 내게와 주 방을 개와 주 주바틸 때내로 내 개체셔들이야 짐바도 와서 교와치만 밀려랑바 이나야 롱주지 뽕네 근데 샤워에는 안 쳐지다 삼로 코트에 요 말와 대대고 롱주게 마봉바시 고여라 근데 대체도 짐바도 와도 산지에 개심부터 담부서라 다 짐바고서 다에 요나 롱주 당는 데를 이나 동생 빼고여라 배낭 가지고 당도 40페이지 당겨요래 대체도 군조 앞에도 짐바 표요라 저 소소는 잡불랭이 삼마데 나라줄에 와에 차요라 잡불랭 뉴진 가지고 잡불랭이 미소자고 제가 와에 차요자네 대치샤네야 소단 정부 메달을 소바이도 안에서 표요라 아니 시할이야 짐바당 원래 제수이라 제요래 짐발에 마부요라 상생이 짐바당에서 알아보지게 민식배 짐바세요라 되네 짐바 생기서 좁아서 같은데 시나고 민집에 심배탄도라 뒤에도 어떻게 심보를 해서 거라 짐바마다 롱지가 풍부를 롱지가 본다 안에 저쪽에 삼로시다 연구 말아 코로나 강에 마셔라 대대고라 제체래 안에 추tum성에 대다다게 미세 미치고 추tum성 거라 디마소나 짐배 드부데 안에 돈주라부터 들이야 미네 펜도 매베요 비지시라요 말아 심바당 롱주 용야 여비체 티 겨와들 미 겨와들 실랑바이나 애니 텔레 롱주 텔레 롱셰 티 제부야 마오발레 선자도 마스는 야 심바다 텐데세 코네 콘도 페네니 심베 파르디 심바세 티야 도고야라 인데 심바제 추디샤 티니니 야보치 람도 롱알야 서버 콤고라 랑게 파츠와 마쇼세 티체베 이나야 샹지 손네 발라서 바타 나하메도 마보용 세그라 ten데 kabla seba komgor mato kira chimba ta ane karsore seba ti soje pala soba te su shela chawa pamba te yogu marese o ti de ko seba de keche bunyiri mesinalya seba de keche bude sogwa se sendis en tende ta ko kewa kangala troe ko ne kawe ko ne jukwe ro tende ten samde shirab se ta shirab ko cheba che andauta tingezere tilaya yane yandu samluta yane yandu samluta dene ko tingezere duara tendese telitoleane soso malam kane jawachima melu kebarse tendese tolne te tarchimbe saje gitambata jawasho sida chulya me kanga yabude injirte ya tarchima shima moyogura saje chutan dem jabarsho sabsa malam kane tendese gore songdo te ke shishu do kibuchongol ya telo tendese.
So here we need to hold this kind of basis of pure ethical conduct. And it's said that particularly for the being of small capacity, but the foundation for all is that we need to have, again, this basis of pure ethical conduct connected by stainless prayers and aided by the practice of the 6 perfections. So here, even if one has held ethical conduct and is born as a human, if, say, for example, you didn't engage in generosity and are born in a completely destitute kind of situation, it's quite difficult to be able to even think of the Dharma if you're just trying to cover your basic necessities. So here, in order to be able to increase and develop all of these minds, we need to make sure that we have the kind of situation in which we are able to increase those. If we have, say, practiced generosity in the past and gain a good rebirth wherein we have the kind of material necessities that we need, we can continue to increase and develop that attitude of giving. So here, material generosity is not the only type of generosity. We can give actual things, or like when we are offering the mandala offering, we imagine, we sort of conjure up in our minds all of the beautiful things within this world and offer it. We all have some kind of stake, some sort of control of this world. And so we are able to imagine that as a beautiful kind of an offering and make that, imagining it as a Buddha land and offering it to all sentient beings. So we can engage in material giving. We can protect others from fear. That is a type of generosity as well. There is giving of the Dharma. And this is something that is important for us to engage in because, again, we need to have the kind of conditions in the future wherein not only are we born as a human, but we have enough to sustain ourselves, to be able to continue to develop that attitude of giving away. And again, in order to gain a good rebirth, we need to make sure that we hold ethical conduct. If one does not have ethics, then the kind of results of generosity might ripen in a lower rebirth, wherein we have lots of things, but we are not in a good situation. And we also need to have patience. If we lack patience, we are unable to really keep our ethical commitments, and the kinds of virtues that we have accumulated, we destroy through our anger. So we also need to have the kind of joyous effort, perseverance in our practice of virtue. We need to develop the kind of wisdom, which is that investigative faculty, as well as our meditative concentration. And so here, engaging in not just the foundation of ethical conduct, but all of the 6 perfections is then brought together with these stainless prayers, making the kind of aspiration, may I gain a good rebirth, and wherein I am able to meet with the teachings of the Buddha and continue to be able to practice.
Oh yeah. Then the take us over. That delay ko samle chere de ya thordo ne kibun dringi samle ko gora. Oh the indiko. Tam me wa chupa ke wa chutumne. Tada me ludin kebar chechi tona. Roa. Tichi dange sole de tendo kyo sambo. Ya bode de. Chutube tendo roa ya bode. Ina ko tia ko tendo te wa chimare samgora. Kega na chilo sobe tonge mabo shochi ora. Oh, ti indiko. Tezu samlu tangi ora. Mile kega na chilo sobe tonge dewa chede meni mendo bata tonge mabo samta ora. Tramadu mabo che nga zungu sumto de ora. Samalia mendo betonge ora to. Spencho tramadu chichi di madu shie da na cha yo kaga. Tonge samlu samlu ta de ra. Te kyo de samai ba thoma me ba ne tinde samlu ta. Mile ke na sigo ta nyo ita tondo ta ke je ba wo che. Ro o ti de tonge mabu che ore samte ko le ta nyamu ba shawa do che ne phubun do le che ko chinje te le ya tonge je ra shi chi ma to me do sam ta ti le den de ten do sone te le tharwa chi che go do sam go ra ta da nga ju kyo la ya te kyo chi ma la na ko e kyo re de go ra ina ya ko e kyo ten de chi ten do sone te ten do ya te ne 동해를 땐도 탈배시도 고해 동해를 땐도 탈배시도 네 탑시 chegudo samte tondaliane ta tendreala chonye te mambo samya yordo ta tonda o te chegudo samte tamba yonsa de kane yogudo samane nga samsangan jinda ene ta chola chapa te wange ne standi made snando madu yende shanchola ta te wange ne kane ke je Liji Chebache, Sembi Samlata, Kyo, Mikyo, Kagasagi ora. O Titsawa Resha, Samjane, Kibun Drinki Samlokone, Tungele Tendo Tower Chichegu, Titando any Ta Ranga, Samsamato, Sambi Banging, and Sindima Shuk Chora Tangudo, some Tiwangena, some Chagbe Yushuk Chimbu Mabuse, and it is to be a never thought no Rangana Madrach on the country. Oh, tendel tenene kosum jele sange sane kyo sange langudo samti thongma me bane de ma ba tendes te ko chuna pe kale khabure sam tunge de yagu samlutana samle juwa te ge jira ngazu ke chira samlma da ke soasi yo ma do o te inde tunge le tendo tawa chi chego te chedo ene da me bala so ba chata nyiri mesena kondro nga je trato dressem ro Oh, tezu kaka de kache da nyoru tango do sam nyamo le tharo she ko do samje ti ponde inde ba ke ko yora o ti ke de ne tharo to be she do o ne kar so da ta me ba ta me ta ba chamola so ba te ko me yora tezu komba chagi sam ko yora ya de
So then going slightly beyond that, even if one is too, by accumulating virtue and protecting and guarding against the 10 non-virtues, ensure a good rebirth in the future. one looks at that kind of a life and you can see that that isn't something that is stable, lasting happiness. Like when we begin to reflect upon the various kinds of sufferings, not of the lower realms, those sort of go without saying, but the sufferings, even when one has taken birth as a human, we have all kinds of sufferings of wanting something and not getting it, or meeting with things that we don't want, losing things that we had, and so forth. When we really begin to reflect upon it, we can see that this is in the nature of suffering, this kind of a life. And reflecting further, seeing that really the taking up and casting off of our aggregates due to the force of karma and the afflictions, this is something that is what one would like to get out of. So here, although at this stage one recognizes that a good rebirth as a human or a god is something that can be used in order to strive for that state of definite, lasting freedom, they recognize that that in and of itself is not something that is really true, lasting happiness. So beginning by thinking about like the 12 links of dependent origination, they see how it is that this thought of I, some kind of a like stable or autonomous independent I, gives rise then to these thoughts of attachment towards one's own side and aversion toward the other. And in turn, due to those kinds of afflictions, we accumulate karma and this cycle continues. So reflecting in that way, a being at this level sees that by meditating on selflessness, by counteracting that fundamental root cause of our cycling in samsara, they can get rid of all of the kinds of suffering that comes from that. So here again, if one can see the kind of faults that come from this, that when we look at our life that we have now, even as a human, we see all of the various types of suffering that we have to encounter, like when things don't go our way and we get sad, or when we don't get what we want, when we meet with unwanted kinds of circumstances. And it's not just in this life, but rather this is something that is beginningless. Since beginningless time, we have been driven by this kind of ignorance. And when we see the faults of that, then one at this level says, I need to abandon, I need to get rid of that kind of ignorance, as well as the attachment and aversion that come from that. And in order to do that, one needs to cultivate a kind of understanding of selflessness and subtle impermanence and so forth in order to strive for a state of lasting, true happiness.
Oh yeah. Oh, the teacher let go. Don't let some Ninjung to the case had a white given drink the toilet. Koyong Mambo Samlutan, Toma Meva Nashatan, the tomatoes, Ganga Samlutan de Ora, and the Maumban and young Judah to the Samlutan. The Societolia, Ninjung Samlu Shuchambuchiwara, but the Teletandu Samlu Shuchambuchi, Socichibutana, and Medusa, the Society delicious Jinsega Pamala Soba, Yende Yasasa Butula Sobakarin, and Soci. Shenja Sawata, Geshe Chesa, but the Zula Chesamlutan, Konzo around the Chibu Corte or some. The Zula Tomato driver tablet or some member, Socichibu Agitat and the Mara Shvichidesha some. Takarina Tapshi Chichego to some che. And the Marshiba Serums. Tianit Sendi Pamasa Maibani and Dilla Sobada. Teza Maiba Kiwanga Matinga Machidi. Di Pada Mada Nienda Nidu Sosolia Sendili Cheshu Imbe. Karichi Sungwin Tinashim Majura Mendosam, Tanda Kijifin and Homashim Bamato, Societili hit and get to the Kawanga Mangamandams, Karikari Jute, Societindi, Pamali Hazard of Chivachin getting really Jute or some the Samlocone, Kansa really in Ako, Rangi Kyoane, Cutie Pay, Chinchin Butsindi Pamanashi, Tindima UHA, Yamendo, Samsa, really Samlutan, Chilla, Samlutan with the Sungdua. Oh, the Kuchi Samlutan, the Salumatana, you get to the Tonas with the Cape Henderson and had Zuzu Sachi and Magada, same jet together Tower Chaste. This was a Namjun Drondi, is to so me say, Salutan with Songoda. Chile Samlutaya, Pama Yandilla Sobacheva, carry Samlutans. Teacher Dennis and Jerry return, the Zanchi Monachi, Jurio de Samlukoda, Timadoko Chitan, Simjeta Japada Majuse. Tanda Delici Salmadana Kevas Luyo Marishada, Zuzu Sachi Mangir Chador, or the end. Tezu Samatam de Rana Kadin Chamber, Sende Pama, Yandi Ya Roa, or Kande Curian and Tinashim by UHC and Medo Samsa. 어디인데 대소 사모 탐제가 더 죽통 것이 제고도 삼 니린치데 와라 당부데 소세 파마치제세 대치주면 도사 심제 탐제세야 되더라도 마도 탐제가 더 전에 가거야 저투에시 요마라 산제 좀 되는데 마부쳐서 가거야 저투요 마라 소소면에 수위나 그 일에 매봤다 죽통게 그거 가르쳐나 어떤데 죽통 것이고 삼 심제 탐제가 더도 라 단다라는 네가 매베 라니 껴군세 연대 군대제 가사신 주로샤삼 텐데진 구르스나네 샹지 터트비인 사네 심제 탐제가 더 동엘에 트레시 동에 산제지 고마토 와샤게사 랑두르진네 탐제 샹게 로와 껴군세 연대 군대제 산제지 고와시 투바샤 텐데지 투네네 심제 터샤토도 삼 대체도 네 심제 탐제가 더 산제지 고마토 버샤삼 삼르게 고여라 기부챵베 어떻게는 사다당아서 최전배 감들이야 심지어 탐지가 더 두통게 산제지 고반치네게 토버샤 대체도 최년게 요삼 어꾸노세 때문에 삼버쇼세 어디래 야
So here at this point, thinking about samsara as beginningless, how one has taken rebirth due to ignorance and the various afflictions again and again, by reflecting in that way, one gives rise to an attitude of renunciation, this really strong and genuine wish to get out of this situation of samsara. So that kind of reflection, like if we really were to think about suffering, we would generate this kind of attitude of renunciation. But then the question becomes, well, what about all of those beings that we cherish, that we have affection for, that we have love for? For us to strive for our own peace and happiness alone is really not suitable. It's not right. When we think about the beings around us that have cared for us with great kindness and affection, like the mothers and fathers of this life, the beings that we really cherish most, we wouldn't want to leave them behind. And by contemplating going beyond just the parents of this life, we get into the contemplation of thinking about the sixfold cause and effect, recognizing that whoever it may be that we cherish or have most affection for in this life, every single being has acted in that kind of capacity in a prior life. Other than us not recognizing them, really, we have had that kind of relationship with every single being. And this is something that we need to contemplate in relation to every single being that we encounter. If we have just this kind of like general idea of, oh yeah, all sentient beings have acted as my mother, that doesn't actually benefit our mind so much as having that recognition with every single being that we encounter, really feeling that this being has acted as my kind mother or father or this or that. When we have this sort of thought of just all sentient beings as like this general category, and we're thinking, oh, I want to free all sentient beings, but we don't connect to that with the individuals that we interact with on a daily basis, then it becomes not very beneficial to our minds. But rather, we need to have the kind of attitude that encounters each being and sees that they have acted in that capacity in the past. And then we recognize that as much as we may want to benefit these other sentient beings, we don't actually have the ability to do so. And so the wish arises, may I attain this state of Buddhahood, this state in which all good qualities have been developed to their fullest and all faults have been eliminated in order to be able to benefit all sentient beings. So that kind of attitude of striving for Buddhahood, the state in which one knows all of the kinds of points of what is to be adopted and what is to be abandoned, having the knowledge of how to benefit all sentient beings. Although, of course, countless Buddhas have come in the past and they have not been able to help all of the extricate all of these sentient beings from samsara. We too should strive for that kind of state, thinking that I myself will become a Buddha in order to be able to benefit these sentient beings. And so for that purpose, we are listening to these teachings. So one should set this kind of motivation, thinking that I'm listening to these teachings in order to be able to become a fully enlightened Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Oh yeah. Oh, 당연히 내 참되려 봐. 대말로 산디가. Oh. tumba sanje rani ki se ra chu nam tenjin debra jwa yimbe ne ji se ene rang shin ji tube tumba ngusum do se shin se ta sanje chumde de rani ji se yora ane chu nam tenjin trebar jiwa yinbe kyusenji ni rangwe ne tongba rangi ngowe tongba de ngusum tu sekshin sigora tedar shen la tenpa yinbe so rangi ngusum tu kenji si nyamdo tokpa kyule keba te ane ngen dendre nyamsola ne tokpa dendre kyeso ta kyunso dendre nyamsola sama songu yore sigora o shen la tenpa yinbe tenpa sanje ne tenpa mawa shen le kemba lana meba tenjin trebar jiwa yinbe ane rangwene tongba, medakba, tongya soba titruk gyora nambage. Tenjin drebar jwa peke shimbuchi gyora, shiting sadubte tilte gyora. O te indi ko tenjin tedar shenla ya chu sungba yinbe, sanje chumdende de tumba mawa shenle kimba lana meba, tumba lana meba, o tindri resi gyora. Tumba shenda suya mangchewa chigita jiten kamdi wandu shena, jikden chebabu yode takpa rangjungi kansachi yode tiki tseba resa rashi shegi harmato shegi rangi chuji ngar zinda tang zinda jesu ge tome maribe shichene tende yala chungi kone kursi tuzu shegi yo mardo shanko tenjin rebar juwa sungwa te mikse chire tiyora shi tawa tenla payo la tenjin rebar juwa tonde tenla papki yode rawa ne lambe ya kone kondu triya te kanga tenjin rebar juwa te peke chibuche sungwa ti chane tende sungbe chane tenjin rebar juwa yinbe rangune tongba se o ti ene rangune tongba todi ene nyamo tamche tsawala nyoba ti sanje chumdende timu mayimba sungba songza tende sungbe chane tongba sanje chumdende la tongba lana mewa se o ti shenda mendra re se ti chane re so tongba mawa shenle kimba lana meba tende ta tongba o ti chane ne tende le shiso ne shida lamden rebi namsha tamche sungwe tira o tongba lana meba kyuwa ta tedar tembe longnam sanje tembe sanje katuzo ene rwa longi tembe nyingbus o to longi tembe nyingbu tende yinbe chane tongba temba te longi tembe nyingbu rwa tedar tokbe shirabde tokbe tembe nyingbu she o tene tende tembe temba lana meba te tembe shungde ene rwa longi tere sigora o te tokbe shirabla soba tezu tene lana meba re se shenda mendra zabulin di tol che songe shenda kange ma songe o ti sonza ti chane ne sanjelia o ka se mese ke balana meba ta balana meba re sti shena o ti bodo chi ya.
So then, picking up in the text on page 98 in the English, it says then the Buddha directly saw the emptiness of inherent existence by means of the key point that phenomena are dependent arisings. So due to their being dependently originated, the Buddha saw directly then that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. So really, it is through his knowledge of dependent origination that he then explains all of the rest of this, like impermanence and selflessness and so forth, is really based upon that kind of foundation. And so because he then taught it to others in that way, the Buddha is the peerless teacher and the peerless knower among all others who are called teacher. So this really gets at what is the unique, uncommon teachings of the Buddha. In this world, most who are referred to as teachers assert some kind of a creator God, as if there were some being who independently created the universe and its inhabitants and so forth. But as opposed to that, the Buddha, through this recognition of dependent arising, taught what he saw for himself to others, and thereby is really unparalleled or peerless as a teacher. So having determined the kind of nature of dependent origination, he then bases his presentation of the basis, the path, and the result on that kind of knowledge, which he has gained through his own experience. So here, this kind of uncommon, unique teaching of the Buddha has the capacity then to harm the root of samsara, to actually be able to lead beings to a state of liberation. So here it says then the verbal teachings that reveal dependent arising are the quintessence of the verbal teachings. So that which expresses dependent arisings is really the essence, the quintessence of the verbal teachings of the Buddha. And the wisdom that realizes it is the quintessence of the realized teachings. So here, in terms of the Buddha's teachings, he is peerless or unparalleled in the sense that he gave these teachings of dependent origination, both in terms of the verbal designations as well as possessing the wisdom that realizes that. And this is something that is unique to the Buddha, that was not taught by other teachers.
Oh yeah. Tanda di so de tanda de nge ko to a. Tende ke chimbure so ede. Tanda de le tende yana chungni ko na kwa ko ju de song yo ba. Tende no de tende de ba chunga. Yana chungni ko na kwa ko yo des. Oh tende do ye de namja chogi tende do ba. Dame do ba la so tende ko na do res ti she yo ra. Oh ti she de gar she go res de. De kwa ko re de da chi ne chu sange kanga de jikten cheba bo takba chi cheba mare se ti she yo ra. Ki soso ge tome mari we ko na la le sa ne. Ra ra soso ge ngan jing ge wa ge ne chagdan ge wa ge le sange sa ba te ko ge ore ski she yo ra. Kindu ti shenda su je she yo mara. Te je de bar ju we ko ne ra ge ne le yu da. Ne le ji chi ye kyu ni de ba le te ne chi ne ji ji de chi de de se ra. Nyogu la so ba te de cha ne so gu da ando ka so. Nyogu sab ka se salu jagba. O te le si ne te de do de so ra. O te du ka so da. Chi te de to so rang ne le che da le ji chi ji che. Ti so so na ne de bu ya ga do ka ga tu bi ores. Nang te de ga ra so ko ko te du sa ma te so so nga ji ko ne la ne lu nga ye so ji. Ku sa nge le te ne yo bi ores. O te so bi ora. Tiende te shenda meda timu mai bare de ora. O cheda juda ken la tene chi ne da nage ne da nyelen da leje chi kyujin so so ne kegre se. Kwa kudu dende dende che korgyo ra so re se ti she ora. So so de so re se. Kwa korna to ge kyu ne da kwa le do so so la ba yo re se. Shenda je che ne ta te kera shin se ra so so dāpa sāra kākē mēwa shē mīchī kī sōngkē tī kārī sōsō yīmbā dā tīndrē mā rē sā nīpa sōsō lō yō rē sā tī kōkō yō rā jitēn shēpa bō kā sā tū shendā kāyō rā tsō rā tā sā tī shē tū tā shendā tī tū chū tī shendā chī kī mēwa tā kōntō yō rā o tī chī lā yā nī ndī rē.
So here, this is a really important point in that it was the Buddha alone who really, based upon his own knowledge and understanding, described the 12 links of dependent origination, how it is that we cycle in samsara due to ignorance, how we create karma and so forth. And then on the other hand, how it is that we extricate ourselves from samsara with the kind of purified side of the 12 links of dependent origination. So when it comes to both the kind of external environment as well as the beings within it, all of the good and bad and so forth that we experience, it really arises in a dependently originated way. When it comes to our own cycling within samsara, this is due to our first grasping at an I and then giving rise to various afflictions, engaging in karma, and in turn cycling in samsara. So the Buddha described both kind of an external dependent origination as it applies to the external world. How, like, for example, the Rice Seedling Sutra was taught on the basis of seeing a rice seedling, a sprout coming. And he explains how it is necessary to have the substantial cause as well as the coordinating conditions for that to come about. And so that is true of external dependent origination. And so too with internal dependent origination. We have to have the kind kind of substantial causes and the coordinating conditions to bring about this cycle of rebirth. So here, the kind of teaching of dependent origination, particularly that of internal dependent origination, really puts the sort of power in our own hands, as opposed to our suffering, our whatever experiences being the kind of result of the actions or the whims of a creator God, that we are sort of subject to whatever happens to us. That is not the case, but rather our own liberation or being within samsara is in our own hands. So again, as opposed to other teachers who might say that, well, whatever happens to us is the result of the causes created by someone else, the Buddha indicates that because of dependent origination, it's really in our hands whether we are cycling in samsara or able to get ourselves out of that.
Oh yeah. Oh, they do it. Then they draw a corners, then they catch a boy, but then the corners. And they got those penguin papa lutugi. Umazawa shirabla soba to Juka Sudwa. Umazawa shunam so Zawa shirab the river to Juba. Seven dollars sober Kopsu Sigara. Tamba Sanjay then they let you down to be there. Top the shirab Mamus and the Toya Yore there. Then the Deborah so bad that came by the Shibuchis. They say the Shibuchis, teach on the to Osera. Then this will be connected with your Esera. Chidate Veko Maya says, so to reconnected with your Carson attention Deborah so but Shandy Lodola so much no do some this summer baka to Yora. Tis a tinju regbody in a tongue and Rawata that Chever Chesido. Tinju Deborah Regbotegi, Tawang about Noreta, Norway says to unity, some dig passe to Goddess. Rangitawa Namsha Shida Lambda Trebu Namshatia, Tension Deborah Shane, Imbeshana Movie Neluti, Nezungone Kang, but the shit of Yora. Rangi Shida Lambda Trebu Namsha, some tension Deborah Joala Shishone, Shaviora. Or Chisoza, Tendesana, Tended the Pecation Buddhas, Gumbolutuki, Shunga Binalia, Devache Shasigar, Yatishilang.
So it is then for that very reason. Then continuing, though there are many avenues of praising Buddha in general, the glorious protector Arya Nagarjuna, considering such critical points, so here really thinking about dependent origination, in his most important works on Madhyamaka, including the fundamental verses on the middle way, 60 stanzas on reasoning, dispelling debates, and praise of the inconceivable, praised the Buddha from the viewpoint of his teaching emptiness of inherent existence as the meaning of dependent arising. So here, although there are many ways in which we could choose to praise the Buddha for his various qualities of wisdom and method and so forth, it is praising the Buddha for his teaching on dependent origination that is really sort of most important or most valued, in that it is this view of dependent origination that has the ability to stop, to avert all wrong views, all bad views. So given that through this understanding, a proper understanding of dependent origination, that has the ability to dispel all of the kind of wrong views, the tangled nets of wrong views that those that people might have, and allows one to know the sort of actual nature of things, how they come about. It is for this reason that many masters such as Nagarjuna choose to praise the Buddha for his understanding of dependent origination or his teaching of dependent arising.
Oh yeah. This was the daily Chedani Chembuke, Tuba Tente Sobekona Sanjel Teva Sonsha Sigora. Oh, Chetsonga Peja Tente Tuba Capsos. Tente Tuba the Tente Sobekona Shaji Tuba Toyara. Oh, take up Scarisondosana. Kanshi Station Sumba Kenda Dumbalana Mesh. Tumbatum de Shirwa, Shunam Teji Dewayamba Sine, and it moving Nelu Songiora. Kanshi Station Sumba Rangi Si. Te Lamde Shandala Chijimalo Temba Zavades ora. Kanshi Rangi Station Shala Sumba. Jura Kanshi Station Sumba Kenda Dumbalana. Kimbalana Meba, Dumbalana Meba Standal Dosa. Kenda Dumbalana Meshenda the Madrasi. Te Karesni Kawa Tejin Debra Jos. Kawa Sanjay Sumden de Tejin Debra Joa Socias. Station Tombatella Dus. te rangi se tele teni shala ya ne domba jenge tomba tela deus je songdoa o te ndu de tende sombe ko ne kha tu go tende sombe ko ne sanje la te ba je tena ne ka chönam kyujen da dashi da doshi la tenje debra joa dine nangbe tadu tamje ge soshin tabru juwainos tenje debra joa sedile koju ni yara chi da nage go sama kyudan kela nyelenge kyudan leji chi ge kyula tenje del ne ne ya ke hore segore teche de shenda kyu karsore cheba bo kyudan tende yosa koryo mara rārāngi tumu māyīmbē, drē shikye goyona, drē kye tumu māyīmbē kyu, drē ki sābyō kōrē, ni chūdā lūdā trāshī tuñjū tsāngā chī kōrā. Tī chūna kō kye yōngir mātō, shendā chī ki samlī tōni, kye shō, kye gogu mē sē, drē chī ni kō yōngyā yō mārē sī kōrā. Kyūdā kye tsō sō na, rāngā mē bā kye yōngirē, kye kuya sū samnā, mā kye sab sū samnā, pēngi mārē tī kye yōngirē sī kōrā. 규진지 마장단에 깨고요 삼수 삼나 그 깨요 말했으거라 뭐 고랑게 내 주에 내 다랬으거라 어디도 갈소라 제대로 시대 때제 레버리 좋아인데 그거 두개 때네 딱 뱉던데서라 때네 깨베 던데다 때네 딱 뱉던데 때네 니셔라서 때제 레버리 좋아한테 치다 나게 뭐 건가 찔레 때네 지주에 규다 깨를 때네 깨도 시기도 Tiede meda bada chikin yurwa cheyada tungayda leda nyumbe kyure chene tungayda tameda kanga te truptoda tene takba deya te truptogare tene takba sana kyujin tsokba la tene koya trupi yote korana le mambu chi chashe mambu chebe chigare chame yo mare sama inde chada kansa rina pungbunga la tene ne kansa shagura mi shagura mi pungbunga la tene kansa shagura 그 때내 따와라 미세야 되고 뭐 그런데 때내 따와라 교단께 마부지 소발을 때내 기거를 어디야 때내 따와 풍부할 때내 가사세 트시세 뜬두스 파타요 레셔라 til 때내 따와 때내서라 단다 랑게 뭐야 기도 주인 마부지 소내가 깨고래 나와 깨차수네 차세 마부지 버시요래 차셰다 따네 되나네 간사르네 찍디르세 랑원에 요 말에 랑원에서는 랑와 시그로 랑원에 소소요 말다던다 나가랑 요 섬기도 안 가서 고대전 다가를 스페셜할 때 용구도 안 보게 싶은데나 랑게 매버스 고랑원에 그 두에 요 말에 나가서 삼나 나가랑 요 섬디 소보체 샘체섭게 와라 이내 그 풍부할 때네 초하다 샘단도 시트줄 때네네 mi bashagora tahi bashagora 조조 사직게요 말아 지나 요나 풍부해나 내시 요거려나 텔레션에 요거라 지네 가야 변도와 세사 동번이 때나 봐야 되다 때네 딱배 때는데 때도 토메 마르바 신요 말에세 토메 마르바 나사 라와 짐바테 템바 말에세 뭐벤데스 튕기 말에세 가랑아 라와 지요 말에세 풍부할 때네 딱 봐, 파다고 그러면 되게 라와시 연에 딱 가봐도세 제대로요 말와. 뒤에 제가 때네 딱 뱉는데 때네 줘야 되는데 배그에 셔버 뒤톤에 가가 struktu요 하라. 뒤쪽에 가르쳐 버선 거내 주톤에 주고요라. 뭐 고랑게 내가 쳐다지로 교단 경기 자와 쳐다지로 교단 경기 전에 그거 여다 열로 뒤딩한 주 친지로 야부지 샤마도네 내가 그 노르비하라 어디 소자티 계신분에서 되셨다 언데도서 또반자데 때나 최남 교진다 교진스 교대 년에들 거거라 도롱기 교대를 거거라 계스도티 로벌 현지 지견들 텔 로봇 챙게 그때 뭐부터 뭐 년에들 년에들 봐 교르토에 로봇 챙게들 현지 지견스라 시다 교단 깨를 때네 쇼데 떼제 데버죠 와세 디지레 다시단 도제를 떼제 데버죠 다시스도 비게 차셰 통대시오라 캄바르지네 고개군을 소바치 통고라 남과 동벌이야 따야게 요마로 시고라 요마라 바라르지네 고르비치 통선에 되요라 어디 버슈레 샤시체스 미르비지네 고토치 통선 디테 캄바르스 차셰르비치 통고라 tele dakshi sigora pa lo yo techi re sha se pa tae shi ji gora tele dakshi kasa ene pungunga sobo chigre sempre choare dushire dujire tezo ganga mi dakshira mi sogo mena merero chigmaro ti ta sengeji mi sengeji ti nalo do shu tengi shi yona ene ko sobo lu judo mengeje kokora rawa tubu chigje sobo loga chigje sobo lega cheba ko lega cheba chan rumaro o imbeja dakshi dan doje la tenen doje su tanye de la kora dakshi ji yoba che doje chatan togwe tanye ni yora shi tele mingji ta shagre shi tone tele shi se ming ta re ko o tele tilam na yabu do sam togwa shi ne mingji ta shara in shanda ge ming de lab suno tele tene pa togwa shi ki da titire ti mare de se tanye ta do jiden ge tanye ra jidel ko mingre ta kujure se shara te so togwe sam da se shara ma to kanga ri ngo ne tumne ngala de se gu su tuwe ge yo mara ti yone zambuli sangma min kanga chigba yonguro tanya kanga chigba yonguro yongumendo longbare meda ta ya do ka o de doje ge togwe pa ta kwa sura dakshi la tene dakshi char ma인게 khashe char tele ten de chi res pal ta gar te chamra sha go re sura jiden ge tanya tene ta kwa sam su do togwe ta kwa sam sera ranjimbe sama rangla sama soje chimbas 다게 타체그래 다체체 타에게 요 말했어요. 지금 타냐랴. 어디선다. 다데 계신분에 스테셔래. 도시 대제 레벨 좋아하다. 같이 다시다 도시를 대제 레벨 좋아. 되는 남배 떡도 탐배가 소시. 다 남바가 산제베 따와다 죽다 남주시도 강가가 소시 다부터 텐데들에서 tene takbe tende da tene kebe tende nibuta o tele shiso ni o tene kongo nesu le tene shagi o deso o dichla dedis
So here, additionally, in the opening verse of his praise of dependent arising, which really is a praise to the Buddha for his teachings of dependent arising, Je Tsongkhapa also praised the Buddha from the viewpoint of his teachings on dependent arising. So he says, he who speaks on the basis of seeing, this makes him a knower and teacher unexcelled. I bow to you, O conqueror, who saw dependent arising and taught it. So here, again, we have this praise to the Buddha who knows the actuality of things, knows the reality of things based upon this understanding of dependent arising. And having understood that for himself, he then teaches this to others. So in the paragraph that follows, it says, therefore, phenomenons arising in dependence on causes and conditions, or on the basis of imputation and imputed terms and concepts, is like a king post for all Buddhist tenets and philosophical views. So really, when it comes to dependent arising, we can have two basic understandings of that. The first is that for all inner and outer phenomena, their arising is due to dependence on causes and conditions. So here, when it comes to like something like say a rice sprout, in order to generate a result of a grain of rice, we have to have first the uncommon substantial cause, which is what cause is referring to here. And then the kind of coordinating conditions, the soil and heat and moisture and so forth, in order to bring that about. So when it comes to the arising of something like a rice seedling, if all of these causes and conditions are assembled, it doesn't matter whether we are sitting there thinking, oh, please sprout arise, or if someone else has that thought, or we think, oh, please sprout don't arise. It has nothing to do with that. If all of the causes and conditions are assembled, then it is going to come about. It's not from our wanting it or not wanting it, but rather it is due to those causes and conditions. And really based upon a reflection, a deep reflection of causality, of dependent origination in the sense of all phenomena arising from causes and conditions, we can come to a kind of understanding of impermanence and suffering and selflessness and so forth. And then there is the kind of dependent arising that is dependent designation, we could say. So when it comes to any sort of phenomena, when we have a designated something, it is a whole that is designated on a collection of parts, right? So here, when we have something that we designate as being existent, there is a kind of basis, and then our mind, using terms and concepts, designates, oh, this is this, or this is that. So here, it's not as though like when we have this, we have a sense of ourselves as sort of existing in and of ourselves, in our own right. But really, when we look at it, the person is something that is merely designated on the collection of the 5 aggregates. It's not as though we can point to anything within those 5 aggregates as being the person. But yet, when our form does some kind of activity, we say, oh, the person does that kind of activity. Or when we have a thought, we say the person thinks that thought, and so forth. And so it isn't the way that this, like, for example, the person appears to us as being existent in and of itself, in its own right, independent of our mentally labeling or designating it. This does not accord with reality, but rather it is only in dependence upon this kind of dependent designation that we then are able to posit the existence of something. And so not understanding this sort of properly, there are many potential for mistakes. It's really all of our mistaken views come from not properly understanding dependent arising, dependent origination. So, for example, again, when we see something like, even if it's, say, like just the face of a cow, we can say, oh, there's a cow. It's not as though that particular single part is the cow, but rather the cow is something which is designated in dependence upon our mind imputes. So say we see just the form of a person, and then we can say, oh, there's the person, there's Tashi or Tundrup, whatever it might be. And without that particular basis of designation, we couldn't designate that thing. But these phenomena that appear to us as though they had some kind of existence in and of themselves, they don't actually exist in that way. So here, where we have, there's the imputed term, as in we give things names. If they somehow existed naturally as the bases of those names, then we wouldn't have all kinds of different cultures and languages that give things different names, but rather that name would sort of be inherent in the thing. And then there is the concept. So once we give a name to a particular phenomena, we then have like an idea that goes along with it. So there's nothing that is existent from its own side. They appear to us like that. If they were naturally existent as bases for those particular names, then we would all use the same kind of names. But yet that's not the way in which they exist. And so here one needs to learn to be satisfied with the kind of level of existence of merely being dependently designated. And this means that although one can't find the thing as it appears to exist, there is this mere designation and it exists by convention. And so really this understanding, this twofold understanding of dependent arising, both being dependent upon causes and conditions, as well as being dependent upon imputation, is like the king post, or sort of the life stake that is for all Buddhist tenets and philosophical views.
Oh yeah. Tadirida Tendrigindo Yeta Mechawa Danying Deshera Namju Tendrigindo Shidua Shologa Chishiwara Hotel Tendrig Do Yeta Maseta Namjunga Sudote Hotel Tendrigindo Do Yeta Mechawa Danying Dute Chewa Tande Tondanying Buddhi Shaking Shera Take our dosan do less, do the Karasan dire. Chonam Tamje, Kulechon, Teju Tishin Shigbe, Kulang Goba Kayaba, Kijon Chimbu Tege Sonse, Sholokachi de la Tendring Dos, Yora, Tendring Dos, Otire. Tati Karsus, Shebe Tendring do de la Ase, Tendring do Sholokachi Butela, Sanje Sungi Chenor, Tendring Bu Samuyan do, Tendring do Sigura, Tendring Bu Samuyan do Sigura. Te Karsura. Nimbu Tidi Tumbendose, Sanjay Sumbe Tendegi no Nimbu de Su Tilne, Sholuga China Su Tune Sum Shaban Dores ora, She Yonso Trashin se. Donde Chunam Tinjudu Tembes, donde we choose something and the Tenjin Revolution Res, Titegiora, Chunam Tamje Kule Chun Sigua, Tige, Can't temperature Tuja, Tensa Tuja de Suresana. Tuja tela kasure ka temperature tuja teda la se che ka tinju yimba teda ne se ka tengyo se che kanga dakshila tenjen drelne ane pa tanya tak bo tesam le sha go re se tishe go re sera teda ne ne rangu ne yebe tongbe tendo ro yimbe se tende re se de Tambu Kidusan ko Judan ke Mamboji Sony Akigore, ko Rangune to the Shanda Sayanashi, Kidus Yuni Korantine Atayambur said the Yomarwa. Kidus ko Kidus and Jebu Yover, Coordinate Atayangore, Chichidu Rabu Mazu, Tondoris Tapshidu Korangambuja said and the Ambuji Atayangore Doa. Diana ko Tendin Ambashani Kidus Yomarwa. Kyutusu nyele de da lenji chigin di yora. Tesu sangma tso ne yuro che de no ko drebuchi tayang go arba. O ti inde ko takba da temba da chi shenda chenge meba de tine ha ko go ara nangba chena. Kyudan ken le tension drelwa chi wa te ke kyujin ko na ta or ma do. Kyujin ma de ne shenda chi chi che ye te nangba ta tu re yo ma re. O ti inde kai so de. Doji le so Rangune Tongbe to draw in Besset, Tension Deborah Joina, Chidra, Tende in bed Tongbase, Tongba in bed Tende Sigua, Kuni Chichil George and get a shot order. The Kachi Senako Tende ina, and it Tongba said in my dear, Tongba in it, Tende Young Marisi, to the Mangu mouth to the Tendes Sayorwa. The Inako Umbaba to Luna Shichena. Thou she chashe Kora Mainke Kashe ten pata good. Koran rangune mebe tara, rangune yona chashe tuzute umara, yenge ngune tili tsukura. Diris yetina ne kansara jine pumbungane ne diris yana pumbungale los yore, diris tsukutsusa kora. Tautun che ne nyese, nyeju kora, oti yomare. Kares ne, mingtaye koran de pumbungabu, karule tene pa mingta yora, kashe tongale tene mingta yora, kashe soso ina soso soal tene tiringa kibumendu sera. Tendechen minta yora. Kinde tezu kanga chawa cheba de daga chawa cheba drogo doa. Ta de la loss yona. Ko nalo shu de yore konzo chawa cheba de daga chawa cheba drogo marwa. Sobo gile chesna daga le cheba drogo mare. Ani chiru baga sewa le tene. Kasura. Ta de pumbul pete shenchi yona. Pumbul le cheba de daga le chawa cheba drogo marwa. 다들 가게 매주게 차도래. 치료받자네 가서 사부땅을 제부 민배다셔라. 사부 인셔라. 내 제바보다 많이 셔라. 다들 사부서 롱제바보다 인셔라. 롱제바보다 레기요 말아. 레기 지체네 칼라로 세트와 주나 다을 롱제반 루마라. 테 라베 고조를 지었으나 다 고조제반 루마라. 어디인데 가서 야타데 망타스. Oh, yeah, dvaci leso. Tova leso. Oh, yeah, tembre. Dene, do dene yonso trashense. Do de chönam tenju do tembe kala tember cheve tuja, tela chö kan tenju yemba teda ne rangune tongbe tendo droa yen las, tenju res de rangune tongba de kondo de sara. Ene terden do de 추잉 최지잉 동반이 때문에 차네 도델라 최지잉기 도와시기어라 쇼로가치들라 최지잉기도 그래 텐데 텐자 동반이 땡겨라 야 때보도 질라나 세자 송소 세보다.
So then we turn to this next section, which is discussing the greatness of this Dependent Arising Sutra and really the kind of essential meaning of that. So here, this is a sutra that is often quoted that really has this kind of, this verse really is the essence of the Dependent Arising Sutra, wherein it says, the Noble Mahayana Sutra called Dependent Arising states, the phenomena that arise from causes, the Tathagata proclaimed those causes as well as their cessation, thus taught the paragon of virtue. So here, really, all the essentials of the Buddha's teachings are contained within this one single verse. So here, this verse, the essence of the Dependent Arising Sutra, is renowned as the precious treasure of the Buddha's speech, the sutra that forms the essence of quintessential dependent arising and of the profound meaning of emptiness, and then teaches it. So this sutra reveals phenomena to be dependent arisings. Now here, for the disciples to whom it is taught, the fact that phenomena are dependent arisings takes on the meaning of being empty of existence from their own side. So here, when it comes to phenomena that are dependent upon causes and conditions, first, the Buddhists refute the idea as espoused by some tenet holders that the thing itself, the result, exists at the time of the cause. Now, if that were the case, then there would be many faults that would come from that. We wouldn't have to do any sort of work to produce a field full of a crop because that thing would be existent at the time of its causes. But rather, as Buddhists assert, it is only through these interdependent, the connections between those causes and conditions, that anything comes about. So there's that level of causality. But not only that, so again, first it is establishing that there isn't a kind of a phenomena that exists at the time of the cause, but rather an effect is something that is dependent upon causes and conditions for its arising. But going further than the essentialists, the Madhyamakas also take this to mean that the whole is dependent upon the parts. There is nothing that exists in and of itself in, like, for example, the way that we say, oh, well, that's a human, but that's dependent upon the 5 aggregates. We can't point to some sort of person aside from that basis of designation. It's not existent in and of itself or from its own side, but rather it's only merely due to our designating, oh, that is a person on a particular basis, that we can say that it exists at all. So this is not something where it exists from its own side, and neither is there some sort of I that is separate and apart from the aggregates. So we are able to say, like, oh, I feel sick, or I'm feeling happy. We are using a particular part, designating on that particular part the existence of the I. And if the body does something, we say, oh, I do that something. Now, if it were the case that the I were somehow totally separate and apart from the aggregates, had some kind of existence in and of itself, in its own right, without being merely dependently designated on the aggregates, then whatever sort of actions that form does, that wouldn't be done by the self, or whatever sort of thoughts were thought would not be done by the self. Now, there are those who teach that the self is somehow just sort of like the enjoyer of various things, that it doesn't have the kind of existence as something that is a dependent origination. But here again, as the Buddha has taught, based upon his own kind of understanding, all phenomena are empty of existence from their own side. So here, this sutra, in which it teaches phenomena to be dependent arisings, and that understood as being empty of existence from their own side, then based on this, the sutra reveals emptiness, the sphere of reality, dharmadhatu, and from this viewpoint, this sutra is also said to be called the Sutra on the Sphere of Reality.
Oh yeah. Don't dele tene suda, don't sholoka shibudirida, tentinimbion don't dele tene, tatita dal tebache, sambache, combache, baletene sigora, tenjin dever jua tonto with seura, and tele se chu tamje tenjin de bari join ba tele semje ranshin time number ta be ranshin namda ge ranshin namda ge chuni ngo ni ku da tele tene sem nyomo ba da shije treba ni le ta be ane ngo ni ku de top to re sera bangba tele se ranshi lobur namda ge ngo ni ku se timi bangba te se ora ngo ni ku da sem lobur je tima number ta be ngo ni ku da o ranshin namda ge chuni se de time ta be chuni de se ora ane sem lobur je time ta be ngo ni ku da se de timi bangba te se ora lobur je tima se de nyamo ta mi se be mo ba te lobur je tima se ora ranshin tima se ta ma de sem ge sang ge sa so sem ge de chuni de ya se ora time ta be sem ge chuni se ora tong ba ni se o de se ora tila kasa time number ta be ranshin namda age chuni ngo ni ku da se to ti se ora time ta be sem ge chuni de se ora de do o de lubu de se ngo ni ku se tibani pangba de se ora pangbe yen de se ngo ni ku se de le ni se to ranshin namda ge char ji be ngo ni lubu namda ji char ji be ngo ranshin namda se de sem tenru gi ta be nam ge namba tamje chi be se tenru gi ta be 다시 왔다 된다 동바들 세요라 어 티니셔라 뭐니 운이래서 다티네 미다 동에 또 담에서 시제 탐제 캠베 네 이시 추고 토벌 이시 추고 다 남제들에서라 미다 동에 또 담에서 봐 뭐변내주 컨디션이 다시 바뀌어버려 이시 추고세 어디세 아니 야티보도 지람나 마음도마다 이시추고 토바 인신이 세바다.
So here, then, by seeing dependent arising, independence on this sutra, so by hearing, by studying, by reflecting on it, meditating on it, you attain two embodiments of a Buddha. Now here, I want to change the English slightly maybe. So the first is the nature embodiment, which has two types. So here is first, and this is really the nature embodiment is describing then the qualities of abandonment. Really the second component of it is. So first is then the naturally pure sphere of reality of the mind, which is free of characteristics of true establishment. So that natural purity, that natural sort of freedom from true establishment is then the first kind of the naturally pure sphere of reality. And then we have second in terms of the nature embodiment, and here it's listed as the mind that has been purified of all the adventitious defilements, but I think it should really be the sort of purity of adventitious defilements, because here we are referring to these qualities of abandonment. So this is really referring to the freedom from those adventitious defilements that is attained through eliminating all of those kinds of adventitious defilements. So I in terms of the nature embodiment, I think it's maybe not the mind, but it's purity, that state of freedom. In terms of this is describing the qualities of abandonment. And then second is the sublime wisdom truth embodiment, which knows all there is to know: impermanence, suffering, emptiness, selflessness, and so forth. So here, when it comes to then the kind of qualities or sort of the embodiments of a Buddha, the nature embodiment refers to both that natural purity of being free from any kind of true establishment, as well as the abandonment, that purity that is attained through abandoning the adventitious defilements. And then there is the part of the sublime wisdom truth body, which refers to omniscience, knowing all that there is to know: impermanence, suffering, emptiness, selflessness, and so forth.
뭐야? 단디 어디다 투베 추궁원도 제바 딜레스 투바상게 좀 된다게 네 추구 이시 추궁원이 올서 타르치네 추궁원도 제바레스 오랑원도 제바 딜레스 셴베게 제베스 타샹라 펜베시도 세워라 제바 소 니게 공부 요소 투베스 손 더르드니 손베탄데 텐데긴도 데서라 용수 두배 땡제진도 네 두제 남비 두배 땡제 쪼로 조번 잡아임be 두제 남비자 도데 뜬사발을 때네 아니 이시슈고 니고 상제 고발을 써봤어서 토비에게 땡도 삼루동사가 시디 조번 실은 조번 잡아래서라 잡아임be 땡제진 도데라 추구를 세도 tra시 도데라 추구를 세스 명다도와 오 티파도 질람나
So then the sage actualized this truth embodiment. So the Buddha himself then actualized both the Svabhavakaya and the wisdom Dharmakaya. And from this, his principal act for the benefit of others is this dependent arising sutra, which fully comprises his thought. So here, then, it is on this basis that others are able to attain such an embodiment. So he presented it as the main object for his disciples to practice. Thus, this dependent arising sutra is also renowned as the relic of the Buddha's truth embodiment, in that it is, he taught that proper practice of the meaning of this sutra in that way is the primary cause of ultimately obtaining quickly the truth embodiment of a Tathagata. So here, the Buddha, this sutra of dependent arising is referred to as like the relic of the Buddha's truth embodiment, in that it is the main basis for practice of others wishing to attain that.
Oh yeah. 대다른 돈데 추신도 냠수 람바네 세워라. 근데 터도 대신식배 최고 뉴도 톱 안에 가서래. 토베 교육조 임바를 송대 tenye래. tenje 데브라 조와 데네 대신식과 남비 최기 고인데 수 tenje 데브라 조와 통화데 대신식과 통화 실송바다로세. 다 tenje진도 대통야 오지 통송나. telitene kusumla sobate zo kanga tom sanje ko ba to gure songuda ya tibo to chindo shandure ya.
So again, he taught that proper practice of the meaning of this sutra in that way is the primary cause of ultimately obtaining quickly the truth embodiment of a Tathagata. The Noble Dependent Arising Sutra states, this dependent arising is the truth embodiment of the Tathagatas. Whoever sees a dependent arising sees the Tathagata. So here it is dependent upon understanding, realizing this, that one is able to attain the three bodies of the Buddha and so forth.
Oh yeah. Tan donde kaba sonsage lungba de sugora. Donde kanto sombe ne sumjutsa sombe lai ne redo. Sumjutsa sombe lai ne harmonia se. Dalir se tochin kabura se chusa shiwangira. Hotel sombe sera. Kanla sombe tuje suresne paba tadula soba. Nyende namda. Ane paba chambala sobe chenju sembe kortezul sombe sera. Kornamda se. Minji tabo lai tene changba ro changba la soba te zo yo de te zo so ba de se ane meji gi ta bo changba da la yong bo jashin la so ba la ye kornam la son la se ya te ba de la chana la
So then, in terms of where this sutra was taught, this was said to have been given in the heaven of 33. So at the Pandukambala stone slab, a throne for the gods from the heaven of the 33 gods, Buddha gave this dependent arising sutra to an assembly of Shravakas, such as the noble Ashvajit, who was among the Buddha's first 5 disciples, bodhisattvas, such as the noble Maitreya, and a group of gods, including Brahma, the ruler of the beings of this tolerable world, Indra, the chief of the gods, and others. So here, this in terms of where the Buddha gave this teaching, this was from the heaven of 33 gods, and this was the audience to whom he taught this.
Oh yeah. That ne kan de cheres do de sonro na se sangelia shu yora. Teya papa chere se ane tomba la kuibe tu ne se kushep se cha chen sura la ku traba chi du sar ne chöden shengbe debu shindu cha chewa tobar deba nambye deba kangbe chi du la to zu ya shu ni chöden shana ni penyo kande yore se de shu do te chöden shangbe ane penyo de ya teme che tenya che to sombo re so ra che den shimbe drebu shindo kyachewa tobra deba nambi deba kangbe che to sangbala sobe la da keno pama namda kenye pama la sobe sonam shindo pewar yowe che tendo solse kozo che ten shana tenali ane penyo kande yoba la da meda chi su shangbe na ti soro na asya shudowa chere sige roa she sowa she sowa la ene sanje chumde de wote do de sombare se sholga tumbe ye dame chen de somba do tinile son do nal tende do sera ya tichila.
So, in the context of teaching the sutra, furthermore, at the outset, the noble Avalokiteshvara bowed respectfully to the teacher, put his upper robe over his left shoulder, sign of respect, and requested, in order to fulfill the wishes of those gods here who want to attain a very great effect from building a stupa, please teach them the Dharma and explain how to greatly increase merit. And in this world of gods, Mara, Brahma, Medicants, and Brahmins, explain how monks and nuns and male and female lay followers can maximize their merit. So here, this was the kind of a request that was made by Avalokiteshvara. How can these beings gain merit or increase their merit? And this then, according to the noble Dependent Arising Sutra, the teacher thereupon spoke the central stanza of the sutra. So it was in response to this question by Avalokiteshvara.
Oh yeah. Tate do de ra do tam ye tam do de sonshu de che de cheten shin la ani pen de yo de she do. Te dar ye tam do de sonshu de che de cheten shin la sonam shin do ja chawa toba ne pe shan she do pe cheten chunju ji sha ba ina se go chen bu shan na pen shin bu ura. Pe na kyuru re tene drusam ge cheten she che de. Guru Rasa Chijungi Tsechi, Chunju Shanes. Tell us so she cups of the Gidea, you were so she the cup nation, Chunju Shera. And the Chunju in a Songara. And those of the tea, Chedela, two in the Kanza, two Kanya, two Pura, or two Bagula methods, some Shichana answer, or didn't be Chunju Shibicheva in Aya. Tedar, Chebabo, Hodan Minamla. Sangbe sunam kene sa, la sangba le kichi sunam kene, dene shipyo ne, shuden li shan li shipyo ne, sangbe jiden du Geshe Yeshe, dene ne sangbe, sangbe jiden ne sangbe la to sulia, kiru re se, tende le sangbu sa re sora. La namda kewa nyambar, kewa ran gyura yando dini le so se, ya o tibo te chikyo na.
So here, again, explaining the benefit of making a stupa with this sutra, it continues saying, thus, if you construct a stupa and make this Dependent Arising Sutra one of the sacred objects that you place therein, you create very great merit. So here, even if it is something really tiny, so for example, even if some humans and gods were to make a stupa that was merely the size of a myrobalan fruit, or like I think gooseberry, something quite small, and place within it a king post merely the size of a pin. So you can imagine that if the sort of life stick in there, the king post is just the size of a pin, and make an umbrella for it with a mere vakula flower. So again, something quite tiny. Even if one is to make such a tiny stupa, they would generate the merit of Brahma and then be reborn in the Brahma worlds at the time of their deaths. So from passing from there, they would then be born among the gods of the pure abodes. So here, the kind of merit that one is to accumulate by making a stupa that has this sutra of dependent arising within it is something that is very great, even if that stupa itself may be very small.
Oh yeah. Da ngundu su ngema jagale ya ye tamase de sungshu shane ni chuden shen lo su do se te person de sarna de lebe tamis tu basa chuden chimbu shora ma jo kore kyapte chimbu shora o ti kol shegora Windows ye tama shebe sikche sisu cheba te nangden do shube choden nalo shuchun. Shube choden jaga pabe yuto shense yebe person chik nese tata sarna to chongo kowe ne sanje chongo kowe ne sarna to yebe dame stupa sigra choden chembo chora nabo chembo chimendwe kogo chese kore chepse chiwara. Oh. 나랑저 초대가 손에 시대요 말아. 파파제 고고랑제 첨부 쉬지와라. 어디 담에 있어도 봐서 그랬더라. 담에 있어도 봐셔봐. 내고라 나버츠 준비 수요지 최대 대예시 된들래 셔바표 동주표 된데시라. 최대 대치루 공도 치루 지금 고마주베 로선병원도 최대 양해매가 상발을 했거든. 지루 공 로선병원도서 지루 마주베 로공게 로선병원이야 최대 양해매 자갈 빼네. 뒤에서 그 남벌 주네는 가서 최대 마무상도 공부 마무상라. 어때서? 오늘 선병원도 최대 양해매기 뒤에서 생여받아. 인지 자갈이도 인지 대고주도 가리나서 최대 첨부터는 시비상샤삼 대원을 가리나서 뭐도 인지 자갈 원줄 제백업 최대대 나도 때강 예 뭐셔리 지갑서 때날 때 가리나 산제게 르시르치 요나 구르다 텐데 요나 남서더들이나 가리나 삼배제라 뭐주도 끼네마 뭐지 가리가 뭐이베 갑초된데 나네 산제제 구르진시 마니자 산제 구르진시스그라 텐데케게 라마도스라 세모네 네 센티미터 네카서 구축구치스 센티미터 치시에 있어라 콘즈마친 가제 바동원 인터넷에서라 참내에서 돌리게 된도 도든데 깔이야 돌리게 깔이야 ane omo ye dharma hitu paba se tiyore. Toli tendo ye dharma hitu paba hitu teshendo tadanga to hewartate yo teshencha yo nirude eamate ma shamane sos. Nganjo chunam tamje gyule chunse de senskinale cheche yora. Ye dharma che se yora che tamjera. Hitu paba se chunam tamje gyule chunsore hitu se gyule se yora. 최탐제 교례 중화를 와라. ane hitu teshem chenata gyule tikyu seora hitu teshem tatanga dosu sanje seora heawarta de sanje sumbare seora yetama hitu baba hitu seya tatanga do heawarta de ane kasre teshem cha yo nirodha se tikyu gyula gogba se de da teshem cha yo nirodha se gogba seora ane ne kasre damcha ne te tindu buche shandira chena ta julti te sho chula goba kai basadera samcha yo nirode eom wati ma shamana eom wati se sumba bosa ma shamana so kejon chembe so ma chembo imba shamana se kejon se da o te sumba re se ora o tin do de to ka le ti che ne ti ti ore but shanda ke mere ta chode se uche te ngemade za chenbu chen de sanje sombe nyingbu ro che chode sha lo so yedo o ti lam na ya.
So those kind of benefits are stated in the Noble Dependent Arising Sutra. And dating back to former times in India, the land of the noble beings, there is an example of this custom of building a stupa and placing within it this Dependent Arising Sutra. So when we think about stupas, usually it's not really these tiny ones, but the ones that we can say walk around, circumambulate, and so forth. And in an example is the great stupa known as the Dhamek Stupa in Sarnath, the town on the outskirts of Varanasi where I used to live. So here, this Dhamek stupa is like a large kind of black round stupa. And even nowadays, it remains a holy destination and object of offerings for Buddhist pilgrims. So this stupa was built around 300 BCE during the reign of the Dharma king Ashoka. So at the time, 300 years before the Common Era, during that period, the Buddha's teachings had spread all over India. And so there was at that time the Dharma king Ashoka. And when the British then ruled India, out of their curiosity, they decided to open up the stupa and see what was inside. So they decided they needed to figure out what was inside this stupa, thinking there might be some sort of like relics of the Buddha or his clothing or something like that. And although they did not find therein any physical relics of the Buddha, it is said that inside, on a stone slab 91 centimeters below the top of the stupa, they found a 6th or 7th century inscription of this Dependent Arising Sutra that reads, and then there'll be this verse. But so here they opened it up, and within this stupa, then like about 91 centimeters down, not finding any sort of physical relics of the Buddha, they found instead this stone slab with this verse that we have had, and I will try it in the Sanskrit. Ye dharma hetu prabhava hetun teshan tatago yavadat. And so teshan cha yo niroda evam vadi mahashramanaha. So here, this then is the verse which we have read that says that the phenomena that arise from causes, so ye dharma is those phenomena, hetu prabhava is the arise from causes, and then hetun teshan, those causes, tatagato hyavadat refers to the Tathagata proclaimed or said, and then teshan chayo niroda is as well as their cessation. So the cessation of those causes was taught then by the paragon of virtue, the highest virtuous one, the Buddha. So this is what they then found inside of that stupa.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's even though the tendency though the Turab Trubata Timbesu Kata Trubata Timbena Yisuchi Sara Tansana Shisu Maba. Nimaning Bay Yisunal Trishavch. Yetamasa Shologachi the Trishav Turkan Tembares ora. Yisula Tribashi. Nye Bashes, Chede de Nalone Tirasha Segura. Yetamashi do the Pege to Jurmedrawa, Jutembu Medra Angasam, Testes Medama, the Shida Medasha Mara, Jurmedra Angasam to Sera. And then, oh, take a shadow, Sana. A young pair Nalente Sula Kanda, Chede, Holu, Moshika, young Nalenta, Sula Kanda, Chede, Lama Yabato, Yango, Yesera Tosa. Oh, but the young Nalente Zula Kanda, Chudel Holu so, Mosher Chickups, Yetarma Chiche de Kube, Salibia, Samat in the color, Yetama Shebe Chiche de Kusha Mabu, Dosegora, Samacha Tigal and it, Yediku shout in the Chedenta to dinner Tashas or Naleta Nesigora. Sale Chaza Mambusera. 찾아서라 별에는 찾아서도 사도도 된들라 이기다 최대 그 샵던데 요라 어떤데시 찾아서 샤르다다 다던다 돌림 자면던데 가라 그 샵타샤선 되그래 라루 뭐셔 그 예담에 세제데 잘립 찾아 마부터 여바다 잘립다야 도도 찾아던데 마부터 다 되그래 대단라와 대단라와 잠바다 자면 잠바다 지주 자면 저쪽에 양 빠르게 되게 찾았던데 갑샤스고라 근데 또 마부도 세팅에마 들려서라 진짜가 용게도 소리야 대대를 이제 제로서에서라 찾아 마부도 요새 찾았던데 이거래나 사자 대장군들서 쫄라카 재미 대대남라 땡도요 대대도 나서 예도세 어디로서도세 제가 சொல்ல 얘기 제 날에도 로가 로년가 거에 Tande zum dende nalenta saba de kemne tige tire chiora kombada chi tire chi lapta chiora o te lo nyenga kowe kolia ngunda nguma katu ngema ngeme basora ne saba de lapta ta tu ne ko lo ni shu zanga chi be kablia tolin sondo chi sodwa te yiche nal ko ti sha so ta kong de tinal tende ti sha Tami stubata tuzu kanka tinanduga. Tutenshi kebe trolin, sondi sonshe ka tipsusu ko tepchi soyara o tinal tindako shasi ti injiti ngobore piga ngobore di tempere setu tuga. Deba dan tade nalindra, deba nalindra kande chiore, ta tensa nalindra kande chiore tikol kondo keba suku tsom tindra mabu tivisara, o tinal tishasi gore, ya tishi lapshana.
So here, this inscription was in a 6th or 7th century style of script. So this would have been a very old kind of script, different from maybe what we would recognize today. And there are also 5 renditions of this sutra in the Tibetan canon. So there were slight differences from the various translations, nothing huge, but into the Tibetan canon, there are 5 different versions of this sutra. And so, continuing with this, the importance of this Dependent Arising Sutra, also when the site of the glorious Nalanda monastery's temple and stupa ruins was excavated, the British discovered many small clay tablets inscribed with this Dependent Arising Sutra, as well as many similar figurines of Maitreya and Manjushri. So here, again, when the British arrived in India, they did excavation and exploration of various things, including the old temple and stupa at Nalanda. And they found many small clay tablets with the Dependent Arising Sutra inscribed upon them, as well as many small figurines. There's, we use this term tsatsa to sort of indicate something that is made into a stupa or a figurine, sometimes with script and so forth. But these appeared to have been instead of, say, pictures or something that visitors might be offered to a temple today, that these were offerings for the visitors to a temple. So the source for this is a conference that was held to commemorate the 25th anniversary of a new school being built at Nalanda. So in that collection of lectures that is called Nalanda Past and Present. So here, this was a gathering of scholars who were studying the past of Nalanda, as well as invested in the kind of present of a current school. They said that in former times, there was a custom of giving such figurines to the faithful visitors to the temple. So here, it would appear that in the past, the tradition was to give for those who visited either this inscription of the Dependent Arising Sutra or maybe a small figurine of Maitreya or Manjushri.
Oh yeah. That's chunam tamje jule chunse shologa chidwa. Titamba sanje sumba re mare se toba tira taase. Taba sanje sumba na ne dinana de. Chunam tamje chebe suje de tobe shene sumba ka revese. Taba sanje shene sumba ka. Chidan katelia shene sumba ka cheso na ka chinjila be ka skashe yora. O tina shene sumba revese. Tina ne tishinshikbe sumse to tadanga to hiya warta tuese. Sanje tishinshikba se rangi cheva chugir vese gora. Ene kezon chembe se mara mahasharmana se stva mahasharmana se kezon chembo se sanje kezon chembe tege so tishinshikbe sumse rangi cheva chugir yungur vese gora. O te toba kwera. Sichen de tishinshikbe sumse da kezon chembe tege son she son be toba ranye je ranye la ne toba nge suje de tobe shene son be ka yeba mire so nyamna se te tobe son be samare sa samna o te tobe son be res la ja ora ya te je lakshan dama.
So here, I forgot to say, I have included these descriptions here to clarify that the custom of making this Dependent Arising Sutra as a sacred object for the inclusion when building a stupa, just as instructed in the sutra, is something that dates back to ancient times. So then we have in this verse, a qualm arises from someone where it says that if this verse that begins with the line, the phenomena, so that the phenomena that arise from causes, is the spoken word of the teacher, then because it also contains the phrases the Tathagata proclaimed and the paragon of virtue, the teacher would be praising himself, and therefore this verse is not suitable to be this teacher's spoken words. So there are many different types of speech given by the Buddha, but here when it's saying that, well, the Buddha is referring to himself as the Tathagata and as the paragon of virtue. So would he not then be praising himself? So is it really right to say that the Buddha taught this, or the Buddha is the speaker of this sutra?
Oh yeah. That Tampasan Ote Sanje Sumba Rigres or Karesana. Tampasanje Mijiba Shi Yodanga Ibe Rani Rani Lataba Mobarjum and Doleja. Sunday Tinile, Kota Yora, Mobarjum and Donalia, the young Dua, Tanda di Corsa Sanje Latavati Yungara, Ote Sanje Mijiba, Kaga, Yende, years of Sombalago, Jiba Yomarva, Parche Tamjabala, Mijiba, Miju Tamjabala, Mijiba Sera. Tezuka ngeshin di lam dere tapshin dere parchen dere ti kanga sunge wone yungura minjik bashinga wa yibe rani la te ba ngbar juwe do se shor tina sangma sanje loju sangma yora be tezu tambo ti ka sora kimle kimbo rabdu chunga da kanga chaza yora oti nal do shera ti kare se ngadan rawa ye me bese ngala lobe gaya mese Sanje Koranya ba mese, ngala lamge kegen mesera. Tambu Hindu ke sadhu keta shimbuto sal pebiora. Pebne tezu kanga ke tingizi komne samdenda summi da tendrepodo droe tingizi tozu konzo hako yora. Timado koa tsa tezu kanga koa re de yora. Koa tsawa ne choje ke tabshite konzo tentu buyo marwa. Teni tege tu machim ne ludu kawashe ne rangera. 공부시에 제반제로와 자고티 산제 코랑 바송 샤베 타바 탐제 캠바 탐제 람데 수제 로베 셴다 셰바 마인 수고야데 아카샤테서 테 텐데 생게요라 산제 힌두데 케겐 강가 힌두 라마샤시레 티티 송바레 안테레 토소도 띵이제 코미에다 텐데 뭐도 타르와 탐제 캠바 탐제 람마 노아테 too much in Barate, so then the loss of the Comchapche Camera around the Madame Draw, you may be the Nukasangala Lovian Gamete, Jiten Sanjang Archibose, Yanda Chanju, Tambatopse, Jidena Sanjese, Tanda de Pe, the Archibu in Soda, Yanda Chanju, Lana maybe Chanju Topsara in Soda. Tamje Sinu, Jiden Quinjela, and then a sugar getting Amagu. Sugar to make a gaga magu, can't have Japan by his own girl. Oh, this is good.
No. So here, although we might have the sort of question like, why would the Buddha praise himself? Or is that something that was spoken by the Buddha? Well, the response to this is that the teacher Buddha has the qualities of the four fearlessnesses, and we'll get into what those are, but based upon his having attained liberation in the state of omniscience, he has this kind of fearlessness with being able to proclaim with respect to his own realizations and having removed all obstacles and so forth. And so he also praised himself in the Perfect Renunciation Sutra. This is a sutra that describes the kind of history of how the Buddha was a householder and how he renounced all of that and how he pursued this path to liberation, kind of gives that history. And in that sutra, he explains, or there's a quote that says, "There is no one like me. I have no master. In the world, I am the one Buddha. I have attained genuine enlightenment." And he continues by saying, "I outshine all. I know the entire world. I am not sullied by anything." And so here, there's a little bit more that comes of that, but we're at a page break. So when it comes to the Buddha proclaiming in this way or sort of praising himself, it is based upon really his own knowledge that he has gained. So there are those who look at the Buddha and they say, oh, well, he studied under all Hindu teachers. And so why wouldn't he sort of be considered Hindu? Didn't he learn that stuff from him? Well, the Buddha initially may have studied under the teachers that were Hindu, who may have been able to attain really high levels of meditative concentration, for example, but none of those teachers had the path to get out of samsara entirely. It was due to their sort of lacking that knowledge that the Buddha then pursued that on his own. The Buddha was the one who discovered the path to liberation and omniscience. And so for those who would say that, well, the Buddha was Hindu, he studied with Hindu teachers and they taught him all of these things, while they might have taught him some about attaining these kinds of meditative concentrations, the way to get out of samsara was something that the Buddha discovered for himself. So he really, based upon that kind of certain knowledge, he's able to say, I outshine all. I know the entire world. I am not sullied by anything.
Oh yeah. So did those some tamja pashi sete namjode rangi membership ne sulate rangi she chane shenda sulate go meso gwara. She tedar tamja wala mijibe yende ngawa yembe rangi je chewa chewa te mijiba shinga ro. Ngone mado ne to ene cheira ta khabore samsa tende lamna sa. Ngone kemba so tobe yende ngawa sonja ko 송벌에 소라 체와체반제도 랑그랑의 체와체벌 깨요 말해서라 최나 탐제 제소 측제인데 대급소 민직바 시고네 최된 거를 산절의 민직바 시세대 연대가요라 다 솔로같이 대급소 민직바 시때 거네 얘네 송고요래서라 민직바 시 빠지 마셔야 그랬더래 시제 대급소야 민직바 시고네 덤베 최던바 제바 예데 최남 탐제 교례 중세도 세베 텐데 양라 중예제 최남 통매 마릭바 라텐에 니번 도시 중안에 네 깨와레 것이 주에 버 텐데 양라 중예 nga마 교례 텐데 치마치마남 중아힐라 산jesun데 텐데 양라 중예 소소라 최남 탐제 교례 중세도데 동해 덴바셰고라 동해 진직된 고아당에서 동해 여바 참모 탐제된 도에 내다 르다 론제 디사마서고라 천안 탐제에서 가지고 통대 내를 론주라서 번디 사마서고라 귤레테네 좋아래서 레다 녀몬베 귤레테네 좋아래서 동해 덴바디셰고라 천안 탐제 귤레 중세 디주 디신식베 송세데 디주 레다 녀몬이데레서 군주 덴바디셰고라 디기티시 귤랑 고바세 고된 람데셰고라 로아 제수 코아다 대규 동해다 동해 규데 고바세 고베 고바 요레세 고데셰고라 띵 고바 제베 람야 요레세 티 치마니데 고된다 람데니셰고라 강 고베 고바 요레세 제수 고주 동해 덴바다 대규데셰반 고베 고바 요레세 고된 요레세 거라 띵 고바르 집에 남게템바 요레세 천하수 줄에 뒤셔 줄랑 고바 가야 바세된 고람미디 셰도 다디 고래 텐데 양라 존이 당가마가말 때 침메침메 조레 소거라 침메침메 야나 yana kewe tende ta tanda tere kewe tende shara yuwa yin la se yana kewe tende ta chowa dushi che mengi tende suji pong al tende ra da kewe tende she chuji ba kewa she ra chowa dushi nam che mengi tende she mengsugi tende she ra shiba mengsu she suji pongpo sugi tende ta se megi de regba la sokbe regbe tende she shiba maso nga ba ki chuba regba se she ra megi de regbe kenje sora la sokba tsuwa tende tembe tsora she ra kashi so tunge tembe tebe chönam tamje se ra ta chönam tamje gyule chung se tome ma regba da 다 돈다 문에서 두바 십시 차와잖아. 근데 하나 중에는 제비 텐데 주다 규 텐데 주요라. 대창마테 시바 메소네 껴알랑 메토마 시바 메소가 바뀌지 두바레 바셔와. 아니 tembe 초와체. 전에 그때네 가서라. 규 텐데 주요라. 토메 마르바 이반도지 순반남시셰. 아니 시바 메소 껴라서라. 아니 이게 가 개바세바 고발렘바 주바시바시 티 교이텐데 투라 티데 데비텐데 투데 시바메소가 바케지 투바레바 템바서와 주지바케와 주니바카시 치르베텐데 테조 강가 통에 템바디 그딜레테네 투부딜레테네 쇼아레스티 셰거라 촌나탐제 큐레소스 티데체네 코네디오라 됐던데 연락이 레레 셔도 미기도데 레베진제 초알아 소바 초야텐데다 가시 텐데라 소바 퉁에 템베 데베 촌남 탐제 데비텐데 투티스거라 디 탐제데 토메 마리바 니바도시 숨바남시셰 개바세바제 고발남바제 주바시바 레레테네 초르 규iten데 투레테 초르 촌나토지 큐레초 티셰도 네 가시 동해 대베 천남 탐제 토메 마리 때데다 이번 도지 때데다 수번남시 때데 개바세바 데도와 구발렘바세 슈바세베 때데레 쇼와 임베세 네 독데네 레다녀모 베통에 데바세도 천남 탐제 귤레 쇼세데 독데네 데서 독데네 레다녀모베 녀모베 군조 데베 gyule chunga yinba tenpa yala so tiba to chilamna tunda chunam tamze gyule chung se tunda she so chunam tamze se de jebu tendil shane de ne lu longju samasane de yora kowe ne lu longju sine de tide gyue tendil tu se gyue tendil tome maruwa yiban doji sumba namshi she ra ane ne keba seba kuba lemba chuba siba tagdera gyue tendil ra shenda dagde jebu tendil ra shiba miso nga ba keji tuba ro temba so se
So finishing this quotation from the Perfect Renunciation Sutra, having eliminated all faults, become liberated and free from attachment, I have super knowledge. Who else would you depend upon? So here the Buddha is expressing his quality of fearlessness of assertion. He also expressed his own greatness. And here we'll get into each of the 4 fearlessnesses. But first, also the teacher gave the teaching by means of the 4 fearlessnesses in the instance of this verse that begins with the phenomena. And so again, we have the phenomena that arise from causes. And so by saying the phenomena that arise from causes, the Buddha indicated that each of the phenomena that are the 12 factors of dependent arising comes into existence in dependence on the former factor acting as its cause, from conditioning factors, as in karma arising in dependence on ignorance, and up to aging and death arising in dependence upon birth. So here, when the Buddha says in this verse, then, that the phenomena that arise from causes, this is really referring to the true sufferings, the kind of situation of our abode, our body, our enjoyments, all of these things that arise from causes, as in the causes of karma and the afflictions are going to be in the truth of suffering. And then the next line where it says, then the Tathagata proclaimed those causes, this is then referring to the true origins of suffering. And this is really encapsulated in the Buddha's teaching of the 12 links of dependent origination. And then finally, where it gets to, as well as their cessation, that is encapsulates the two truths of the true cessation and true paths, the means by which one achieves those true cessations. So here, returning to the commentary then, by saying, so here, alternatively, he's indicating that each of the former factors acts as a cause that then leads to the arising of the latter. And alternatively, he was indicating that all phenomena can be summarized as true sufferings. So here, those are the kind of effect links of the 12 links of dependent arising. So those being birth, that's a little bit out of order, but then name and form, contact, feeling, aging, and death, those 6, as well as then the causes that are dependent arisings leading to such effects. So those being then initial ignorance, conditioning factors, consciousness, craving, grasping, and becoming. And so here, when it comes to the kind of teaching of the 12 links of dependent origination, these all encapsulate the kind of 4 truths. And here, the Buddha has taught them in such a way as one understands that these true sufferings, as in are the resultant factors of name and form, the 4th name and form, contact, feeling, and then birth and aging and death. So those being the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and then 11th and 12th links. And then we have the kind of true causes that lead to them, as in indicating the true origins of karma and the afflictions through teaching of initial ignorance, the conditioning factors, consciousness, then craving, grasping, and becoming. So the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 8th, 9th, and 10th links. And so it is in this way, through that teaching, that he clearly indicates the 4 noble truths and how one then achieves liberation.
Oh yeah, that to so. Oh, then it is labna chema ta nga so do do. Di so na ti salu jambe do che ba. Salu jambe do ta lengju ro ba de. O te de salu jambe do de rob re de yo ma ro ko yo ma ro tanda sha sara. Salu jambe do de rob ma sar shi. Lo yi ti chi chene. Tunda chema di sa ne ti che de tune. Tunda ching sa ne ma sa da wa ching go na ni go na. Ti ma rob lo yi esen shana. Ti dina le or ba dreba dina le or do de go de ti shora. O ti mia tange ne do de salu jambe do de sutra shana ti tanda de su rob ma la shana di she do aser shana. To se avo chi de samuta. Salu jambe do dreba de ta de she tanda de su tu ni she sara. Do de rob si re chene ma bo shi go da. O sar san da wa chi che ma chi ti che ma ni a chi ma do go ma re.
No.
Oh yeah, I understood. Yeah.
No. So we have run out of time for today, so we will stop there. There is very little left now in my commentary, and so I just want to say that in the following week, whether it takes us one more Monday or 2, I want to take the time to actually just read through the whole basis of discussion of this entire commentary, which is the Rice Seedling Sutra itself. Now, we've already really gotten the meaning through going through this commentary, but I would just like to read that and make a few little comments in order to, it won't take very long, but in order to really sort of cement the meaning of this. So in our future session or sessions, we will then go through one reading of the Rice Seedling Sutra itself.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Genla. Thank you, Katrina, for your beautiful for your beautiful translation this morning. And I guess we'll see everyone here again next Monday at 8 a.m. Pacific. We'll finish off with some dedications.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamtiryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Yeah, Tulchenangema.
나야, also